Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Backpack to Briefcase series here at the Huntsman School of Business. I am Megan Easley. I'm one of the career specialists here at the school. And today we are so excited to be joined by Anna Stariha from MarketStar, and she's going to be talking with us about managing your mental bandwidth. This is a topic that's incredibly important for students trying to juggle school, work, and just life in general. So, with that being said, I am going to hand it over to Anna to introduce herself.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. So as she said, I'm Anna and I'm with MarketStar. My role here is the Global Community Growth Manager. And pretty much what I get to do is I work with the nonprofit side of MarketStar. And I get to go to schools such as USU and offer some different kinds of trainings. I'm extremely passionate about this topic, not only because I think it's important, but I'm also currently going for my MBA at U of U. And it is something that I have struggled with in my time as a student as well. And so I think it is so important that we talk about this subject and that, especially in earlier stages of getting your degree, it's something that you recognize. And even after you get your degree and you move on to different careers, it's something that is important to everybody. So I'm very excited to be here. And also, congratulations, everybody, on taking such a big step in your life of going to school. It's a lot of work, but it'll be worth it when you're done. So excited to talk today. So let's talk about mental bandwidth then. When we're talking about bandwidth, we're talking a lot about how much you have on your plate. So this is things like decision making. That takes a lot of time and energy and managing all your tasks. This is usually the one that people really focus on when they're talking about bandwidth. It's thinking about, oh, I have this homework assignment due. I have to do this for my job. But there's so much more to it. When we talk about bandwidth, especially in school, there's also the processing of information. I know in my own degree, when I have really hard classes and it's still taking an hour of my day for the same class, right? So if I'm taking a finance class, that's an hour. If I'm taking a marketing class, that's an hour. But the finance class is living a lot more in my brain than marketing because it's way harder for me. It doesn't come quite as natural. And so the processing of that information, that takes up a lot more of my bandwidth. I notice that I get a lot more crabby and that I struggle a lot more going downstairs and doing my dishes. It doesn't matter that it's still just 1 hour. It's because my brain is so tired afterwards. And that can bring up those emotional challenges as well, then, because I'm feeling like I'm struggling through it. It's really hard for me to grasp. I'm feeling quite, not quite as smart as I would like. And then I'm feeling let down by myself. And so that can all take up the bandwidth of my brain. And then social interactions is a big one as well. That's probably the second one that people think of the most often when they're talking about bandwidth, because people get so socially drained so often. And so when you go, if you're more of an introvert and you go into a social situation, you get home when you're just drained. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about mental bandwidth. We're talking about how much is your brain getting taken up by what it is that you're doing currently. And I know in this example, I'm going to be talking more about like the kind of tasks and social aspects of it. But I also want to include that processing of information, because while you're going to school, there's going to be so much of that. And it's really exciting because you're getting to learn new things, but you're also going to be taking some of that mental bandwidth from yourself. So in this example right here, we have this perfect circle. And this is what I consider kind of like the pie of your brain. So you only have so much bandwidth. No matter what, your bandwidth doesn't just like all of a sudden grow. You only have so much. So before you're in school, before you're doing all of this, or during your summers, whatever it is, you have kind of everything figured out. You might have so much time that you go to work, so much time that you're going to the gym, even things like figuring out what you're going to have for dinner for the rest of your life. That's something that takes mental bandwidth. Every single Sunday, I sit down and I try to remember what kind of recipes I like to create. And for some reason, I can't think of anything. That's your decision making. That's taking up some of that mental bandwidth. And then you have time with your family, with your friends. Hobbies are a big one as well. And everything that you do, you only have, 24 hours in a day. Part of that has to be sleeping, part of that has to be eating. And then what you do with the remainder, that's a big part of this bandwidth. And then the other side of that is that you only have so much mental capacity as well. So, filling it with things like hobbies, that's going to be a little bit easier than things like school. And so the dream is, when you add school into this equation, the dream is that you're all of a sudden just growing your mental capacity and that it could kind of fill up that outside of the circle, right? So all of a sudden, you get this new task on your plate, you get this new thing. And instead of your bandwidth staying like this, it all of a sudden is just like this. But that's not realistic. That's not how this actually works. And so it's the dream, but that's not real. And so what actually happens in this is it ends up needing to adjust the rest of your bandwidth. So right now, you're at about a quarter of hobby time. You're at about a little over a quarter of spending time at work. You're still getting to go to the gym. You're still getting time with your family. But this is what really tends to happen. So now you add school. You were having a ton of time with your hobbies. You were having a ton of time getting to go to work. You were having the time and the bandwidth to go to the gym. But now you have an entire new section taking up your mental capacity pie, as I like to call it. And that's where this blue comes in now, this light blue. And instead of you getting to, take it from or add, you have to take it from something else. So you can see all of a sudden the hobbies are getting more narrow. You can see all of a sudden, you're having less time to go to the gym. You're having less time with your family. You're having less time doing the things that you love to do. The thing is work can't get any smaller for a lot of people because you need the income or you need that time with your job. And so you have to take it from the fun areas of your life most often. And that's extremely difficult mentally to handle at times. And you need to make sure that you're getting the chance to still do some of those things that you like. This was something I struggled with extremely hard when I first started school, is I noticed I was taking all of my pieces from my hobbies, and I had almost no time for any hobbies. And then I would be feeling really, really just, I was dragging, I was sad, I was struggling, and I realized I needed more of that. The other thing that you'll notice about this is you're taking things from your friends as well. So your friends' bandwidth might not be changing, or your family's bandwidth might not be changing, but they're starting to see less of you and they're starting to have less interactions with you. And so for them, it also feels like a different struggle in their life. They're not getting to see you as much. They're not getting to have fun with you, to hang out with you. And so it's kind of being respectful of that as well, and understanding that they're not getting that part of their pie anymore, which is really hard because it feels so strongly like you just need the support, and you absolutely do. But that's where that two-way communication has to happen. We'll talk about that in a second. But that's something I just want you to recognize here is, your time with your friends just got a lot more narrow, and that might be hard for them to recognize as well. So it's got to be communicated. But you'll notice everything just gets a little bit smaller. And so you have to understand how to handle those situations when they arise. And this isn't something that's easy just to do right off the bat. I know, like I said, when I first started school, this was so hard for me because I no longer wanted to do my dishes. I no longer had the time to read my books. I no longer had the time to go to the gym. And for me, that was something I couldn't let go, because it helped my mental health. It helped me be a better person. So I had to really figure out what was important to me. And so when you do get too much on your plate, that tends to decrease your self-awareness. And what I mean by self-awareness is your own understanding of your emotions, of where you're at in life, of how you're responding to different things. And so, when somebody comes to you and they say, I'm not super happy that you're doing this, and all of a sudden you're just angry, you're just mad, or realizing that I don't have the time right now to do the dishes. I don't have the time to, go to the gym like I like. And so it's figuring that out about yourself during the increased bandwidth. And it's looking inward and saying, where am I at right now mentally? Because a lot of us don't do that regularly. And so have that check in with yourself and say, where am I at right now? Because I'm feeling really overwhelmed. And so being able to take those steps to look into that. Then we get into decreased empathy. This is probably my favorite to talk about. And I use this example a lot. But when you're talking about decreased empathy, it's that, understanding of other people, but also giving yourself the empathy. And so I think about it during COVID. We all pretty much worked from home, or were at home, or you were going to high school at home, or whatever it is. We were all at home with our entire families, friends, whoever it is that you lived with. And during that time, you'd be doing something really important, like a really big project or a school assignment or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, somebody sits down next to you and they open up a bag of chips, and you're just head down. You're working really hard. You're trying to accomplish this. And the next thing you know, you hear, and they're crunching right next to you as you are hyper focused on this project. And instead of you having the ability to just say, hey, could you go do that in the other room, or picking up your computer and heading to the other room, you just turn to them and you're like, can you stop? And you just immediately get frustrated about it because you lack that empathy, you lack that understanding and the self-regulation and kind of everything, because your mental bandwidth is so hyper focused on this project that you're working on. And it was such a crazy time in life that it was always where we were a little stressed or had the high bandwidth in our mental capacity. And that's my favorite, because you can almost hear the crunching of the chips and you can feel the rage as you truly think about it. And that takes us to the impaired self-regulation as well. That's your emotional outbursts. It's the distractions. I know when I get really, really into school, it becomes really hard for me to stay focused on one thing. And so even in my personal life, my husband will always tell me that he talks to me a lot, and I end up just like blocking it out because I just don't have any more to give anybody. And so he'll just tell me something about his day, and then he's like, no, I told you that already. And it's just because I don't have anything else to give in that moment. And so for him, that's frustrating. And he has to remember that I'm going through a really difficult time in my life, trying to grow myself, trying to, upskill, trying to get new knowledge. And so he needs to be really understanding of that. But then I also need to understand that it's really annoying to get ignored. And so I work on just telling him, hey, this has been a crazy week for me. I have finals or midterms or this really hard assignment. I'm really sorry. I just, I need a moment to process all of this. And then he needs to have understanding in return. And so what comes from that is communication. And so my tips and recommendations to you all is, I'm going to talk first about communicating with yourself and those around you, the boundaries. And so what I mean by this is being able to communicate with others about where you're at. So this takes that step back, and you have to be able to be mindful of your bandwidth. You have to be able to recognize where you're at and say, oh my gosh, I'm super busy right now. Clearly my self-regulation is down. I'm finding things really distracting, or I'm getting really grumpy really fast. And so taking that step back and recognizing that about yourself, and then figuring out how do you kind of overcome some of that, and then set those boundaries with those around you as well. So, hey, I totally want to hang out with you right now. However, I really need to get these things done in order to be able to give you my full support in this. And this can be if somebody comes into your room or somebody tries to call you and they just need to vent and you don't have the capabilities of handling that moment, take a second to just say, I'm so sorry. I totally hear what you're saying right now. I just can't handle this in this moment. And that's okay to do. Absolutely. The thing that's not okay is just to shut down and not tell them that you can't handle this, because that's how you end up losing friends through this. But having that communication between those that you love, respect, that you want to have that continuous relationship with, it's so helpful. And so don't be scared of just letting others know kind of where you're at, and just say it in a way that's like, hey, I super want to be here for you in this moment. I just simply can't because I have X, Y, Z going on. Most people are pretty understanding of that from what I've learned. My biggest thing in life is getting enough sleep. This one's really hard, especially when you're going through your first year of school, second year of school, and you're building your friendships and you're having a really good time, and you might live in a dorm room or wherever it is, and you just want to have so much fun. And then you're all of a sudden looking at the clock and you're saying, oh my gosh, it's 2 a.m. and I have class at 6 a.m. I know I did this a time or two when I was going to school, but you do pay for it the next day. So just be smart about how much sleep you're getting. Still have those experiences, still take the fun of going to college, but take a moment to think, how do I get enough sleep during this time? And then if you are really struggling, don't be scared to ask for help. Ask your teachers, ask your friends, ask your colleagues, ask, the administration, ask for some help, because there's a lot of people that have good tips and tricks out there and that can help you build a schedule, that can help you sort of learn what's going on and how to best go through school. But you have to be willing to tell people where you're at in this. And that's the thing that a lot of people are really afraid of, is just the communication aspect of this. But don't ever be afraid of saying, hey, I'm really struggling building a schedule or sticking to it, or, this class is really hard and I'm just not grasping it. Talk to the TAs about that, and they can help you. And then that'll take some of that mental bandwidth off your plate because you're getting the support to learn. And then stick to a schedule. I cannot express this one enough. Stick to a schedule, build out a schedule, get some sort of calendar, and have a plan where it's, you have an hour a day to study or whatever it is that you need, but plan your life out during your semesters. This will help so much, because instead of you procrastinating and not accomplishing your assignments until the night before, which again, I've done a time or two, but now as I'm going through my MBA, I have a schedule and I'm sticking to it. And I cannot tell you how much easier it is. It is 100 times easier when you have that schedule. And so now every day I spend an hour on my homework. And then by Sunday, instead of me having an entire 8-hour day of homework, I have an hour. And then I have an hour on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then I always take Thursday off where I do no homework or anything, and I enjoy my hobbies. So it's even scheduled in there that I do get time for my hobbies, my family, and get some me time, because that's also super important. You have to have in there some time for yourself. And then when you are feeling really emotional about it, feel those emotions. Cry it out, dance it out, whatever it is that you need to do, doesn't matter, but let yourself feel those emotions. I probably cry right now at least once a week during my MBA. And as much as that sounds like a lot, because it kind of is, I have to get it out when I'm feeling overwhelmed so that I can move on. Because if I don't do that, then it's just going to continue, kind of spiraling and it's going to snowball. And then I'm not going to get the chance to actually feel those emotions. And then they come out way more aggressively and I get way more frustrated with things versus if I just feel it in the moment, I come out the other side a lot better and I can kind of pick myself up and look at, okay, why did that happen? Am I taking on too much? Do I need to, maybe spend an hour and a half right now on this assignment because I'm just not quite understanding it? Or what do I need? Or talk to the TAs. And it helps a lot because that can give you that moment to self-reflect. So really, in the end, the biggest thing I can recommend in all of this is just to remember that you only have such a big pie. And everybody's is a little bit different sized. So some people might be able to handle more. Some people might be able to handle less. And so the biggest thing is to look at yours and to determine where you're at in all of this. Is it something where, you're having too much on your plate and you might need to back off a little bit? And remember, school is one of the most important pieces on there because one, it's kind of expensive, and two, you get graded on it. And so you really need to make sure that that's a priority in your pie and then communicate with the stuff around you or the people around you of what you need and where you're at and all of this. And then look at it and think, what other things do I need to fill my time with in order to keep myself in a happy and solid state? Because for me, I have to be able to read at least like one book a month. And so I give myself every Thursday to read. I also need to spend time with my husband. So every Saturday we go on a date. And then I also have to go to the gym. So I have it scheduled right after I finish my classes. Those for me are things I have to do. And so I will always put that into my priorities with school because I know I have to do good in that. And then also my job. Those are kind of like the things that I fill my pie with. So just look at yours and figure out what it is that you want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
That was some great insight. I have a couple questions if you're okay answering them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of it, I don't know if there even is an answer to it, but any suggestions you could give would be great. How can students become more self-aware of when they're approaching their limits? So like burnout, if they don't know, if they never really thought about it.
I think the biggest thing is to continue kind of how do I even kind of just looking inward. So before you ever start school, how are you feeling? Where are you feeling those feelings? And trying to figure out what that looks like. And then as you kind of go through, you'll notice that if you're feeling really overwhelmed a lot, there's got to be a reason behind that. And so where is that kind of coming from, and being able to look at yourself that way and then be like, okay, if I'm feeling really overwhelmed, why? Oh, I have a lot on my plate right now. Why? Okay, so it's because I'm going to school and I'm working and I'm doing all these things. Why? And so I love I don't remember where it came from, but there's ask yourself why at least 3 times to every answer that you ever give. And that can really help you get to the nitty gritty of it. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, why? It's because I have, 4 classes right now. Well, why? Because I want to finish my degree really quickly. Okay, well, why? What does that do for you? And then that can really help you understand, in the end, why were you feeling so overwhelmed? And then if it is that you're just feeling really overwhelmed, what can you be doing to overcome that? And does it fit with your why, is what I would say.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Then I just have one more question.
Yeah.
So I know for me as a student, this is really hard. So what advice would you have for students that are trying to create those boundaries that you were talking about, but not feeling guilty and selfish, especially when the boundaries involve saying no to others?
So one thing I've learned, there will always be guilt. And I wish that I could say, do this to not feel guilty, especially mom guilt is a thing, dad guilt is a thing, family guilt, friend guilt. there will always be guilt. However, what I have learned is it is okay to be selfish as well. And everybody does it, and everybody does need to do it at times. And what I mean by that is not, if somebody asks you for help, to be like, oh no, like, why would you ever ask me? That's disrespectful versus just being kind of selfish. And so being selfish is being able to say, I can't handle this right now, and that's okay. I don't have to be able to handle this right now. And so realizing that selfish isn't always a bad term as long as you're doing it with respect to others. And so you can just say, right now, I don't have the capabilities of helping with this. But in the future, or, in 2 weeks when I'm done with my finals, or, in this amount of time or whatever it looks like, I could do that. So if you want to come back to me in 2 weeks, I would love to do that with you, or I'd love to help with that. And so it's, when I set boundaries with others, usually if it's something that I just like don't believe in or don't want to do, I'll just say, hey, I love you, can't do it. I'm in school right now. But if it is something that I do want to do, I usually give a time frame on that, because then it can take some of that guilt away. But also remember that during this time, you do have to be a little bit selfish. And as long as you're being selfish with respect, it's not a bad thing.
Thank you. I like that. Be selfish, but with respect. I think that's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for answering the questions. So before we wrap up, just a few things that I just want to mention. There are always things coming up here at the Huntsman School, and it could be a Focus Friday event, the Career Expo, mock interview day, or maybe even more backpack to briefcase videos that are going to be added to our library here. So to check out all the events, here is the link to get to the Huntsman calendar. So check it out, always something happening. Other thing that I want to mention is if you enjoyed this backpack to briefcase, we do have many others in our Huntsman YouTube channel, and you can access that through the link right here at the bottom of the screen. But with all of that being said, I do want to thank you for joining us today. And again, special shout out to Anna for giving us your insights on this topic that I think really is important that students are aware of.
Well, thank you so much, and good luck, everybody.
All right, thank you.